My husband's gym friends convinced him to fake a separation. Their goal was to make me jealous, to realize what I might lose, because they believed I took him for granted. He moved out for 2 weeks, claiming he needed space. But when I began to thrive, openly sharing my newfound single life online, he panicked and admitted the charade. Now he's desperate for a reconciliation, but I've come to realize I genuinely prefer life without him. I've been married to Marcus for 6 years, and we have a 4-year-old daughter, Lily. Until last month, I thought our marriage was quite good. Of course, we faced challenges like any couple. Marcus had always been a loving husband and a devoted father. He worked as an electrician, and I worked part-time as a nurse. We shared household duties and raised our daughter together. The trouble began about 8 months ago when Marcus joined a new gym and started spending time with a group of men who held very different views on marriage and relationships. This gym was one of those intense places, a hub for serious bodybuilders and aspiring tough guys, and Marcus quickly integrated into their social circle. Initially, I was glad Marcus found friends to work out with. He'd always been somewhat reserved, and I thought the social aspect would be beneficial. He started going to the gym 5 times a week and often went for drinks with the guys afterward. I encouraged this, wanting him to have his own interests and friendships. However, I gradually noticed changes in Marcus's demeanor. He became more critical of me and our relationship, making remarks about how I didn't appreciate him enough or took him for granted. When I asked for specific examples, he'd offer vague answers. It's like not thanking him enough for working or expecting him to help. With chores without gratitude, Marcus also began making strange comments about other couples we knew. He'd point out relationships where the wife seemed more attentive or where the husband was more respected. It felt like he was constantly comparing our marriage to an unattainable ideal. His gym friends became a constant presence in our discussions. Marcus would regularly quote their relationship advice, saying things like, "Jake says wives need to show more appreciation," or "Tony thinks women don't understand how hard men work." I grew to resent these unseen advisors who seemed to wield such significant influence over my husband's thoughts. Marcus started staying out later after his workouts, claiming the guys were teaching him important lessons about being a man and earning respect in relationships. When I voiced concerns about the time he was spending away from home, he accused me of being controlling and unsupportive of his personal growth. The breaking point arrived 3 weeks ago when Marcus announced he needed space to think about our relationship. He claimed he felt unappreciated and taken for granted and needed time away to determine if our marriage was worth saving. "I love you and Lily," he said, "but I can't continue feeling like a roommate instead of a husband. I need to see if time apart will help us both appreciate what we have." I was stunned and heartbroken. While I knew Marcus had been acting differently, I had no idea he was considering separation. I asked if we could try counseling first, but Marcus insisted he'd made up his mind, and that space was what he needed. Marcus moved out that weekend, taking a bag of clothes and saying he'd stay with his friend Jake for a few weeks. He promised to continue seeing Lily regularly, assuring me this was about us, not our daughter. The first few days were incredibly difficult. I was devastated, confused, and struggled to explain to Lily why Daddy wasn't living with us anymore. I kept expecting Marcus to call and admit his mistake, but he maintained the separation was necessary. However, after the initial shock subsided, something unexpected happened. I began to realize how much stress and tension had been in our home for months. Without Marcus's constant criticism and the pressure to prove my appreciation, I felt like I could finally breathe. I also realized how much I'd been accommodating Marcus's new attitude and demands. I'd been walking on eggshells, trying to show enough gratitude for basic adult responsibilities like having a job and helping with chores. Without that pressure, I felt more like myself than I had in months. After a week of separation, I decided to embrace my new situation instead of wallowing in sadness. I enrolled in a photography class I'd wanted to take for years. I started doing yoga again. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected while trying to manage Marcus's emotional needs. Most importantly, I discovered I was perfectly capable of managing our household and taking care of Lily on my own. I'd been so focused on being a supportive wife that I'd forgotten how capable and independent I truly was. I started posting on social media about my new activities and interest photos for my photography class. Selfies from yoga sessions, pictures of fun activities with Lily, posts about books I was reading and places I was exploring. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy and excited about my life. The posts weren't meant to make Marcus jealous or send him a message. I was simply documenting my genuine enjoyment of this new phase. I was rediscovering interests and aspects of my personality that had been suppressed while I was trying to be the appreciative wife Marcus's gym friends thought I should be. Marcus had maintained minimal contact during the separation, only checking in about Lily's schedule and sending brief texts about practical matters. But after I'd been posting about my activities for about a week, his communication style suddenly changed. He started calling more frequently, asking detailed questions about what I was doing and who I was spending time with. When I posted a photo from a wine tasting event I'd attended with friends, Marcus called that same night, asking why I was going out partying instead of working on our marriage. I pointed out that he was the one who had asked for space, and that I was simply living my life during our separation. Marcus seemed frustrated by my response and said he'd expected me to fight harder for our relationship. "I thought you'd be doing everything you could to win me back," he said. "Instead, you're acting like you're happy I'm gone." The comment struck me as odd. If Marcus needed space to figure out his feelings, why would he expect me to be chasing after him? Wasn't the point of separation to give us both time to think? But Marcus's calls became more frequent and more demanding. He wanted to know every detail of my daily activities and seemed particularly bothered by any social events I attended. When I posted a photo of myself laughing with friends at dinner, Marcus showed up at my house the next day, uninvited. "We need to talk," he said, barging into the kitchen where I was making breakfast for Lily. "This separation isn't working the way it's supposed to." I asked what he meant by the way it's supposed to, and Marcus's response changed everything. "You're supposed to realize what you're losing," he said. "You're supposed to miss me and want to work on being a better wife. Instead, you're acting like you're happier without me." The phrasing was so specific and calculated that it made me suspicious. "Who told you that's how separation is supposed to work?" I asked. Marcus became defensive and tried to backtrack, but I pressed him for details. Finally, he admitted that his gym friends had convinced him that a temporary separation would shock me into appreciating him more. Nick said that sometimes women need a wake-up call, Marcus explained. He said that if I moved out for a few weeks, you'd realize how much you depend on me and start putting more effort into our marriage. I was stunned. "So this separation isn't real? You've been manipulating me based on advice from your gym buddies?" Marcus tried to explain that his feelings about our marriage were real, but that the separation was meant to be a strategy to improve our relationship. He said his friends had convinced him that I needed to learn to appreciate him and that absence would make me realize what a good husband he was. The manipulation was breathtaking. Marcus had put me through weeks of emotional turmoil. It's disrupted our daughter's life. It made me question our entire marriage, all as part of a calculated plan to make me more submissive and grateful. "How long was this fake separation supposed to last?" I asked. "Just a few more weeks," Marcus said. "Long enough for you to miss me and want me back. Then I was going to come home and we'd have a better marriage because you'd learn not to take me for granted." I realized that Marcus and his friends had viewed our marriage like some kind of power struggle they could win through manipulation and psychological games. They'd seen my normal expectations for partnership and mutual respect as taking him for granted and had devised a plan to break me down emotionally. But their plan had backfired completely. Instead of making me desperate to win Marcus's back, the separation had shown me how much happier and more peaceful my life was without his constant criticism and demands for appreciation. "The separation worked," I told Marcus. "It's just not the way you planned. I have realized what I could lose: my independence, my peace of mind, and my self-respect. And I don't want to lose those things again." Marcus panicked when he realized his manipulation had the opposite effect of what he'd intended. "But I love you," he said. "I want to come home. I miss you and Lily. Can't we just forget about this and go back to normal? But there was no going back to normal after what Marcus had revealed. He'd shown me that he viewed our marriage as a game where he needed to be the dominant player and that he was willing to use psychological manipulation to achieve that dynamic. Marcus's desperation escalated dramatically when he realized his fake separation had actually made me want a real one. Over the next few days, he launched a full-scale campaign to convince me that the whole thing had been a misunderstanding and that we could work through it if I just gave him another chance. First, he tried to minimize what had happened. It wasn't really manipulation, he claimed. I was genuinely confused about our relationship, and the guys just gave me some bad advice about how to handle it. I should have talked to you directly. Instead of listening to them, when that didn't work, Marcus shifted to blaming his gym friends entirely. Jake and Tony filled my head with all this garbage about marriage and relationships, he said. They made me think there were problems that didn't really exist. I was an idiot for listening to them instead of trusting my own judgment. But I'd heard too much about these friends over the past months to believe they were solely responsible. Marcus had enthusiastically embraced their advice and had been quoting their relationship philosophy for months before the separation stunt. This wasn't a case of bad friends leading him astray. This was Marcus revealing his true beliefs about how our marriage should work. Marcus also tried to use Lily as leverage, suggesting that our daughter needed her parents to be together and that I was being selfish by not wanting to reconcile. Don't you think Lily deserves to have her family back together? He asked. She's been asking when I'm coming home? How are you going to explain to her that Mommy doesn't want Daddy to live with us anymore? The emotional manipulation around our daughter was particularly offensive. Marcus was the one who had chosen to disrupt Lily's life with his fake separation, but now he was trying to make me the villain for not wanting to continue the charade. I explained to Marcus that Lily deserved parents who respected each other and modeled healthy relationship dynamics. I didn't want our daughter to grow up thinking it was normal for partners to manipulate each other, or for women to have to constantly prove their appreciation for basic partnership. When emotional manipulation didn't work, Marcus tried grand, romantic gestures. He showed up at my work with flowers and an apology letter. He arranged for a babysitter and tried to surprise me with dinner at an expensive restaurant. He even bought me expensive jewelry and had it delivered with a note about starting fresh. But all of these gestures felt hollow because they were based on the same mindset that had created the problem in the first place. Marcus was trying to win me back instead of addressing the fundamental issues with how he viewed our relationship. I realized that Marcus still didn't understand what he'd done wrong. He thought the problem was the fake separation itself, not the underlying attitude that had led to it. He was apologizing for the strategy, while maintaining the beliefs that had made the strategy seem reasonable to him. The most revealing moment came when Marcus tried to convince me that his gym friends had actually been impressed by my reaction to the separation. Jake said, "You handled it really well," Marcus told me. "Most women would have been calling and begging, but you stayed strong. Do guys actually respect you more now?" The idea that I needed approval from the men who had orchestrated my emotional manipulation was so absurd that I almost laughed. Marcus was still seeking validation from these friends, and was offering their respect as if it was something I should value. "I don't care what your gym buddies think about me," I told Marcus. "The fact that you're still talking to them about our marriage and seeking their approval shows that you haven't learned anything from this situation." That's when Marcus revealed just how deep the problem went. "But they're my friends," he said. "I can't just stop talking to them. And they give good advice about other things, just not about relationships." Marcus wanted to continue spending time with men who had convinced him to emotionally manipulate his wife, and he expected me to be okay with that. He saw nothing wrong with maintaining friendships with people who had actively encouraged him to harm our marriage. I realized that Marcus was never going to see this situation from my perspective because he fundamentally agreed with his friend's view of relationships. He might apologize for the specific tactic they'd suggested, but he still believed that wives needed to be more appreciative and that husbands deserved special recognition for basic adult responsibilities. The final straw came when I discovered that Marcus had been discussing our reconciliation attempts with his gym friends and taking their advice on how to win me back. One of his friends, Tony, apparently suggested that Marcus needed to be more aggressive in his pursuit, and not let me get away with disrespecting him. Following this advice, Marcus showed up at my house unannounced multiple times, refused to leave when I asked him to, and even let himself in with his key when I wasn't home. When I changed the locks, he accused me of being vindictive and trying to punish him for making one mistake. Marcus's inability to respect my boundaries during our separation showed me exactly what our marriage would look like if I took him back. He would continue seeking validation and advice from his toxic friend group, and I would be expected to tolerate their influence on our relationship. I filed for a restraining order when Marcus's visits became harassment. The legal paperwork forced him to take the situation seriously in a way that my words hadn't. Suddenly faced with real consequences for his behavior, Marcus finally stopped trying to minimize what had happened. But even then, his apologies focused on the wrong things. "I'm sorry I listened to bad advice," he said. "I'm sorry I hurt you. With a fake separation, I'm sorry I didn't respect your space afterward." He wasn't sorry for believing that I needed to be manipulated into appreciating him more. He wasn't sorry for thinking that wives should be grateful for basic partnership. He wasn't sorry for viewing our marriage as a power dynamic that he needed to control. Marcus was sorry for the tactics that had failed, but not for the mindset that had made those tactics seem reasonable. That mindset would inevitably lead to more manipulation and control in the future. 3 months after Marcus's fake separation backfired, learned the full extent of his gym friends' influence on our marriage, discovered that their toxic advice had been affecting our relationship far longer than I'd realized. This revelation came through an unexpected source and completely validated my decision to end the marriage. I was at Lily's daycare for a parent-teacher conference when I ran into Rebecca, whose husband Steve was part of Marcus's gym group. Rebecca and I had never been particularly close, but we chatted at various kid-related events over the years. When she saw me, she asked how I was doing after everything with Marcus. I was surprised that she knew about our separation since I hadn't made it public knowledge beyond close friends and family. When I asked how she'd heard about it, Rebecca looked uncomfortable and said, "Steve told me about the guy's plan." "So sorry about what happened." My blood ran cold. "What plan?" I asked. Rebecca glanced around nervously and suggested we talk somewhere private. We ended up sitting in her car in the daycare parking lot while she revealed information that completely changed my understanding of what had been happening in my marriage. "The guys have been planning this separation thing for months," Rebecca explained. "They call it wife training, and they've been encouraging all the married guys in the group to try different tactics to make their wives more appreciative." According to Rebecca, Marcus's gym friends had identified me as a particular problem because I had too much independence and didn't show enough submission to my husband. They'd been coaching Marcus on various strategies to bring me into line. "Long before the fake separation idea, Steve told me they thought you were too confident and that Marcus needed to humble you to improve your marriage," Rebecca said. "They've been giving him specific advice for months about how to make you more dependent on him and less likely to challenge his decisions." The revelation was sickening. I'd noticed Marcus becoming more critical and demanding over the past year, but I'd attributed it to work stress or normal relationship evolution. I had no idea that his changed behavior was the result of a deliberate campaign orchestrated by his friends. Rebecca went on to explain that the gym group had a whole philosophy about marriage that they shared with new members. They believed that modern women had too much power in relationships and that men needed to reclaim their authority. Through various psychological tactics, they share books and videos about alpha male behavior and traditional marriage roles, Rebecca said. They convinced Steve that I was disrespecting him by having my own bank account and making decisions about our kids without asking his permission first. I was horrified to learn that this wasn't just casual locker room talk, but an organized effort to change multiple marriages according to their twisted worldview. Marcus hadn't just received bad advice from friends. He'd been indoctrinated into a system of beliefs about marriage and gender roles that was fundamentally incompatible with healthy relationships. Rebecca revealed that several wives had been affected by the group's influence on their husbands. Jenny's husband started demanding that she ask permission before spending any money, even on groceries, she said. Mark's wife was told she needed to pack his lunch every day and have dinner ready when he got home, even though she works full-time too. The pattern was consistent across multiple marriages. The gym friends convinced husbands that their wives weren't appreciative or submissive enough, then provided specific tactics to change the dynamic. The fake separation was just one tool in their arsenal of manipulation techniques. Why didn't any of the wives talk to each other about this? I asked. Because the guys told their husbands to keep the advice secret, Rebecca explained. Said that if wives knew about the strategies, they wouldn't work. Steve only told me because he felt guilty about what they did to you and Marcus. Rebecca also revealed that the group had been tracking the success of their various tactics and sharing updates about which strategies worked on which wives. My refusal to be manipulated by the fake separation had apparently been a topic of extensive discussion among the group. They're calling you a failed case because you didn't react the way they predicted, Rebecca said. Some of them think Marcus didn't implement the plan correctly, and others think you're just too feminist to be fixed. The fact that these men were discussing my marriage like a social experiment was deeply disturbing. They turned my relationship into a case study for their misogynistic theories about women and marriage. But Rebecca's next revelation was even more shocking. The group has been encouraging guys to document their wives' behavior to build cases for custody if they decide to divorce, she said. They have this whole strategy about how to make women look unstable or unfit if the marriage doesn't work out. My heart started racing as I realized the potential implications. Had Marcus been gathering evidence against me during our marriage? Was the fake separation part of a larger plan to build a case for custody of Lily? When I asked Rebecca for more details, she told me that the group maintained detailed records of their wives' disrespectful behavior, financial decisions, social activities, and parenting choices. They viewed this as insurance in case their manipulation tactics failed and they needed to pursue divorce on favorable terms. Steve has been taking notes about everything I do for the past year, Rebecca said, crying now. He has photos of our messy house, records of money I've spent, screenshots of my social media posts. I had no idea he was building a case against me. I immediately called my divorce lawyer and shared everything Rebecca had told me. My lawyer was alarmed by the organized nature of the manipulation and advised me to gather as much evidence as possible about the group's activities. Working with Rebecca and 2 other wives who had been affected by the group's tactics, we were able to document extensive evidence of the systematic manipulation campaign. We found text message chains where the men shared advice about controlling their wives, social media posts about traditional marriage, and even recorded conversations where they discussed their strategies. The evidence showed that Marcus's behavior toward me had been deliberately calculated, not the result of relationship problems or personal growth. He'd been following a playbook designed to undermine my confidence and independence. And the fake separation was just the final tactic in a long campaign of psychological manipulation. When this evidence was presented in our divorce proceedings, Marcus's claims about wanting to work on our marriage were completely undermined. It became clear that he'd never been interested in improving our relationship. He'd been trying to fundamentally change the power dynamic to give himself more control. The judge was particularly disturbed by the evidence of the group's activities and the systematic nature of their manipulation tactics. Marcus's association with this group and his willingness to implement their strategies became a significant factor in the custody arrangement. 6 months later, I was awarded primary custody of Lily, with Marcus receiving supervised visitation until he could demonstrate that he'd separated himself from the toxic influence of his gym friends and completed counseling about healthy relationship dynamics. The experience taught me that toxic masculinity isn't just an abstract concept. It's a real force that can destroy marriages and families when men choose to embrace it. Marcus's transformation from a loving partner to a manipulative controller hadn't happened overnight. It'd been the result of sustained indoctrination by men who viewed women as problems to be solved rather than partners to be respected. Rebecca and I became close friends through this ordeal, and we've both built much happier lives without husbands who saw us as opponents rather than equals. We've also connected with support groups for women whose marriages were affected by similar manipulation tactics. And we've learned that this type of organized psychological abuse is more common than most people realize. Looking back, I'm grateful that Marcus's fake separation plan backfired so spectacularly. If it had worked, if I had become desperate to win him back and more willing to submit to his demands, I might have spent years in an increasingly controlling and unhealthy marriage without realizing that his behavior was the result of deliberate manipulation. Instead, those 2 weeks of separation showed me what my life could be like with a partner who truly respected me, or even on my own, with my independence intact. The contrast made it impossible to go back to a relationship based on manipulation and control, no matter how much Marcus apologized or promised to change. The fake separation was supposed to teach me what I could lose, and it did, just not what Marcus and his friends intended. I learned that I could lose my self-respect, my independence, and my peace of mind if I stayed in a marriage with someone who viewed me as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be loved.